Before I get started, I'd first like to thank Les O'Reilly and Kathy Hogan, the OceansAdvance Group, and the City of St. John's for giving me the opportunity in the speaker series to communicate the key messages for Petroleum Research Newfoundland and Labrador to all of our stakeholders and the technical and business community. So this is one of two opportunities that we've recently had, and we intend to try and get this message out on a more regular basis. So thanks for having us here. As Les said, those of you who haven't had any dealings with us lately, you're no longer allowed to call us PRAC. We're no longer Petroleum Research Atlantic Canada, and the rule is if you say PRAC, you put a loonie in a cup. It's not a swear word. We're really trying to get our new brand out there. And that became effective November 16th, and we announced that at the NOIA conference. As you can also see, we have a new logo. It's actually surprisingly similar to OceansAdvance. We might have had the same graphic designer, I'm not sure, but it's pretty close there. And we've also got a new website which went live November 16th, so I encourage you to check out the website. In addition to what I've got to say here today, there's some more information there that will complement what I'm talking about today. So I've got about, I'd say 25 to 30 slides. It'll probably take 20 or 30 minutes, and I understand we're going to have an opportunity for questions at the end. So So this is the agenda for this morning, the outline of my presentation. The first thing I'll do is I'll offer a high-level perspective on the importance and context of R&D in Newfoundland and Labrador for the oil and gas sector. Secondly, I'll give you a very brief background on Petroleum Research Newfoundland and Labrador since its inception in 1999 and what has brought us up to the present day to where we are as Petroleum Research Newfoundland and Labrador. You're going to have to excuse me a little bit. I've got a bit of a head cold, so I'll be doing a little of that. So, the bulk of my presentation is going to be on the Petroleum Research Newfoundland and Labrador programs, on our research programs, and I'll go through each of those and tell you a little bit about each of those. And before I get started, though, I've got a little bit of a disclaimer. It's important to note that while I'll speak to many of the industry opinions and details around research and development, we do not speak on behalf of the operators. We do not speak on behalf of any of the oil and gas companies. We speak on behalf of our own organization. We're sort of like Randy Sims, the opinions of the moderator, not necessarily those of this station. So keep that in mind. First, oh, come on. There we go. A little ball right here. So first, let me say a few words about economic value of R&D. I realize it's a little like singing to the choir to tell the people in this room how important it is to have research and development in any technology-based industry. And this is just purely for example purposes. The production profile there is quite typical of the fields we've got off Newfoundland and Labrador. It's a declining curve, and the value that our organization see in R&D is definitely the ability to either arrest or reverse these curves. And if you think back 30 years, I know that when I started back in the 80s, we were all predicting the eventual demise of the North Sea oil and gas business because it was on such a rapid decline in many areas. But because of R&D, because of investments in new technology, they both discovered additional hydrocarbon resources and prolonged the life of many of the fields. So, it adds a lot of value. And consequently, it's very important to continue to invest heavily in R&D in the oil and gas business. If you consider especially the amount of capital investment that goes into each of the projects here and around the world for the major oil and gas companies. So this is the Government of Canada report that ranks each province according to its business enterprise expenditure on research and development, or known as BIRD, and some of you may have seen this. It's the annual spending on R&D performed by a province's business sector, measured against its gross domestic product. And Newfoundland and Labrador currently ranks 6th out of the 10 provinces in Canada. Previously, here we go. 2001, we were right at the bottom of the list. So it's certainly been an improvement in the investment in R&D in this province. So So you might ask yourself, why would the oil and gas industry really be interested in investing in research and development in a place like Newfoundland and Labrador? And there's a couple of reasons, some of them are probably obvious to you. The first is geographical. Newfoundland and Labrador has a geography that positions us as a gateway to the Arctic. And that's been said a number of times in a lot of conferences around here. But the gateway to the Arctic, where we can develop technologies that can be tested and deployed here, that can be used to reduce costs and make for safer operations here, but can also be deployed to other Arctic areas. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about our Arctic JIP programs. In addition, there is, as Les alluded to, there is quite an infrastructure of highly capable institutions and highly capable people here that we have developed over the last 30 years. Some of it as a result of those early programs, some of it as a result of the fact that Newfoundland and Labrador is a marine-based culture. You know, our ancestors grew up on the ocean, and so we've dealt with the marine environment. So that expertise has existed here for a long time. There's a second reason, you know, say what you will. The Newfoundland and Labrador CNLOPB R&D guidelines are a significant driver to spend research and development here, funds here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So it's pretty simple. Dave Finn told me, he said, you can't have a presentation without a damn formula, so so it's pretty simple. The annual requirement to spend on R&D and E&T, and it's important to note E&T, by the way, education and training, in addition to research and development, is simply a product of the gross revenue earned by each project each year, times the 5-year average percentage of R&D investment as determined by Statistics Canada, less a credit for whatever R&D might have taken place during the construction phase of each project. And if no one's anyone got a calculator, you can do some pretty quick math here. The 2011 production rate for all 3 projects, offshore Newfoundland and Labrador, I would say is somewhere around 250,000 barrels a day, 150 to Hibernia and 50 each to Terra Nova and White Rose, somewhere around there. If you times 365 days, times $90 a barrel, times 0.04% is $30 million is the obligation, roughly, $30 to $35 million, just for 2011. Now, these guidelines came into effect in 2004, so we've already accumulated 7 years of obligations in the oil and gas community here. And frankly, you can look forward to 20 more. I mean, he runs and started producing it. So there will be a significant expenditure on research and development, education and training if you take a long-term view, and there will be a great opportunity here for our province. So now I'll get off the soapbox a little bit and talk about our role, which, as Les alluded to, is just starting to take shape. This year is perhaps the first full year of what we think will be normalized operations for petroleum research in Newfoundland and Labrador. Let me give you a little background first. So we are a federally incorporated, not-for-profit, member-based organization. We're not affiliated with, we're not an agent of any of the oil and gas companies. We were founded in 1999 as the Atlantic Canada Petroleum Institute, primarily driven by a bunch of Nova Scotia companies, interestingly. Dalhousie University, College of Cape Breton, Shell and Pan Canadian were the operators at the time that were involved. ACOA put money in, of course, and some of the provincial governments. I think Memorial had an MOU at the time, was the only affiliation in Newfoundland and Labrador back when it started. And in 2002, it was renamed Petroleum Research Atlantic Canada. And for all of those years, the first 10 or 11 years of its existence, it managed a relatively modest, $1 to $2 million a year R&D program, centered mainly around annual calls. I think Dave and company probably did a couple of calls a year, Dave. And it was a lot of seeding money. It went to academics. It went to early phase research and development. And that was fine. The introduction of the guidelines in 2004 and the subsequent enforcement of those, in 2008, led to a transformation of the oil and gas industry's approach to R&D. And in In the 2010 annual general meeting for Petroleum Research Atlantic Canada, it was decided to use this company as the primary vehicle for collaborative research for R&D in Newfoundland and Labrador. We had an organization already in place, familiar with the processes of putting JIBs in place, et cetera, and there was certainly a definite need at that point. So what happened after 2010, aside from hiring a few people like myself? We closed the Nova Scotia office last year. We turned back all the R&D projects that we had on our books in Nova Scotia to the operators for them to manage themselves. We restructured the PRAC membership. Some of you in this room might have gotten a call from me asking you to resign your membership because we were no longer going to be a kind of a broad-based member organization. We were going to be an organization that was solely funded and run by the oil and gas industry. So we restructured the funding members and we restructured the board of directors. We did, however, maintain our relationship, which I think is still very important, with both the federal and provincial governments, and both the COA and the Department of Natural Resources have non-voting members on our board of directors. They would be Westfoot and Andy Nosworthy. We developed a new mission statement, so we've done a lot of work with our directors. Typically, our directors are the VPs of the oil and gas companies here locally. And we do a lot of work with them. We developed a new mission statement, which is to identify opportunities, develop proposals, fund and manage the execution of research and development projects on behalf of the Newfoundland and Labrador offshore petroleum industry, oil and gas industry. And those are our 6 remaining members. So we are funded solely by those 6. Chevron, ExxonMobil, Husky Energy, Nalcor, Statoil, and Suncor.